Hey guys, welcome back. Today I thought we could go through a full strip down of a 6105 movement. I know that previously we went through the barrel end shake adjustment and the jewel upgrade as well. Kind of looking focused in at the side shake of the barrel, focused in as well at the sloppiness in the barrels, I guess you could say. Man, I'm really lost for words this morning. But today I thought we could go through just a regular kind of 6105 service, what kind of results look like before we service the watch, and then what results look like after. Now I like to make sure that the watch is fully wound before we start our service, because that gives us a good baseline. I want to check on the timing machine. Okay, what are we working with? What kind of issues is the watch having? Is the watch running well? Is the watch running badly? So that just gives us a baseline to work with. So I always like to make sure that the watch is fully wound, and then we put it on the timing machine and check for results. Okay, so what are we looking at? A few of you might actually recognize these gaskets. They're Adrian at Vintage Time Australia's new blue gaskets that he sent me to try out. So I'm excited to put those in something. Okay, so we've got our 6105 on the microphone. We can see it's running pretty badly. Our beat error is out. That's no big deal. That's changeable. But our rate is 118 seconds a day. But the big issue is our amplitude. We're at 89, 90 degrees. So this watch isn't going to run for very long at all. It's running pretty terribly and is in desperate need of a service. So let's let the power down and start stripping her down. Okay, so now we can get ready to strip it down. First thing we need to do is unscrew. We actually have to get our cleaning baskets out so we can put the parts somewhere. But we need to unscrew our ratchet wheel. Sorry, our oscillating weight, not our ratchet wheel. Our oscillating weight. I like to keep all screws in a small basket, and then I put all wheels in a small basket, and then bridges and things go in the baskets after that. Let's just center her up here. Okay. Next, we want to remove our automatic work. For the 6105, the correct screwdriver is a 120 red screwdriver. I guess one of these days I'll work out how to do this without sticking my hand in the way. But I must say it's kind of difficult, so. Okay, so we have our automatic work removed. We now need to take our automatic work apart. Again, sorry about that. My wife caught up to me, and we have a 6-week-old baby. So if I hear something, I like to go running to make sure everything's fine. Now, here we have our automatic work. Now, I've put it on something so that the automatic work and the pivot underneath are supported, because sometimes they can move around. So now we can undo our automatic work, like so. Now, as we dismantle and we put our parts for the cleaner, it's a very good idea to inspect our components. Now, I like to inspect components with what is this? A 15, I believe. A Bergeron 15. We can just check our teeth, make sure everything's fine, make sure all our components are looking as they should. And they're looking pretty good. As you guys know, vintage Seiko parts are kind of hard to come by. So, you know, if we need parts and things, we have to buy up old movements and do it that way. So, be interesting to see what our barrels look like. As well, while the watch is running, there's a couple of things that we want to check before we strip it down. We want to check the engagement of our pallet stones with our escape wheel and see how deep they are, because I mentioned previously that our pallet stones tend to be quite deep on these vintage Seikos, and we do have a little bit of movement to bring these stones in ever so slightly so that we can get a little bit more amplitude out of the watch and it can run a little better. So I'm just going to check that, and I'll take you over to the microscope and we can look at that together. Okay, so here's our escapement under the microscope. Now what we need to do is we can look at our pallet fork dropping onto, or our escape wheel teeth dropping onto our pallet stones. Now, to me, that's pretty deep. It's there's enough there so that we can bring that out slightly so that we can get a little more amplitude. Now, the trick is, what has to happen is our pallet stone, when we adjust slowly, give me 1 second. There we go. I managed to secure the movement holder with some Rodico. So what we want, our pallet stone needs to drop, or our tooth needs to drop onto the inside face there of the pallet stone, which is known as the locking face. We don't want it to fall on the impulse face, which is the front of the pallet stone. So we can check, and if we look, we drop onto the correct face. Now, it drops pretty deep there. So, and then we have our run to the bank. Sorry, it's called run to banking. I worked with this French guy that always called it run to the bank, and it used to make me laugh. But yeah, so we can see that we can actually bring our stones in slightly, which is going to give us a slightly better amplitude, which is going to give us a more stable rate. Okay, so we're back at the bench, and now we want to let the power down. Now, to let the power down, we always want to do this in a controlled manner. I cannot stress that enough. You do not want the whole power reserve of that mainspring going in one shot. It's not good. It's not good for the watch. It can actually shear the teeth, shear the pivots off wheels. It doesn't always happen, but it certainly can happen. So it's best if we avoid it. We want to always let the mainspring down in a controlled manner. Now, to do this, we get the screwdriver on our ratchet wheel. We move it aside, and we slowly let it slip through our fingers, like so, until the watch stops. Now we can remove our ratchet wheel. Now we can have a look at our barrel. It's not too bad. Honestly, not too bad at all. But we'll have a look once we get her open. We'll have a look at that bottom bearing to see what it looks like. We remove our click. And now we can get to work removing our train bridge screws. Now you'll notice that we have two bushings and one jewel. Now it's interesting, This watch is going to have lower amplitude because it's got bushings instead of jewels. Bushings have more friction than jewels do, and that's why jewels are used. So let's take our plate off. Let's actually have a look at our bushings, because a lot of the time these bushings can get, pretty worn. But these don't look too bad, to be honest. It's interesting, jewels are actually very expensive these days and extremely difficult to find. Sites is the company that manufactures jewels, and they just don't seem to be manufacturing jewels anymore. It used to be that you could, buy jewels for a couple of dollars, if not cents, and now they're so expensive, it's crazy. So we can see a lot of dirt on our bushing there. But the real question is, do we see brass coming through? And we don't see brass coming through. We see a small amount of brass coming through, just on the inside there, but not too much. But we are going to give this watch a jewel upgrade. The customer would like it, and it's just going to ensure that it doesn't have to be done again. So we can now take our wheels out. We can look at our pivots. Again, if our pivots are no good, we can actually polish them. We can refinish them so that they are good. Now, vintage Seiko pivots, I generally find are good. In the King Seikos and the Grand Seikos that have the high beat movements, they're shot. The pivots are usually shot, and I have to refinish those pivots because wheels just aren't available. But because these run at such a low amplitude, I find them... The pivots are generally pretty good. And it's interesting, that's one of the downsides, actually, of increasing the amplitude of these movements. You do get a better result, but you do get more wear on the pivots. That's my theory, anyway, and I think it's a pretty good theory. And I've talked to, I think I talked to Adrian about this too, and he had similar thoughts. But it just means that if you keep with regular servicing, these watches were never serviced. So it was a good thing that they ran at low amplitude. But with collectors now, they generally like to take care of their watches. So we can offer increased accuracy and performance. But it just means that that they do need to be serviced, at those kind of 5-year intervals. Take our balance stop spring out, or our hacking feature, as people like to call it. I prefer to call it a balance stop spring because that's what it does. It's a spring that stops the balance. Let's take our barrel out. Let's have a look here. Man, that's really good. It's really, really good. It's fantastic, actually. It's amazing how well this is held up. This watch is in incredible condition. This is actually the watch I did the crown rebuild on. So I don't think it was worn much. I think it was sat around in a drawer most of its life, and that's the reason it's in such good condition. But let's get the rest of it apart. Let's get our balance jewels out. I like to just tap them out. Everything stays together, which is a good thing. Same way to get the balance off. Just tap it off like that. Check the impulse pin. Check the balance staff. Again, the balance staffs are usually pretty good. And the impulse pins are too, especially with this watch. And we'll keep the balance aside because that's going to go back on the watch. Let's take our center wheel cock out. It's technically a cock and not a bridge because it has one screw. For something to be classed as a bridge, it has to span an area and have multiple screws, whereas a cock only has one screw. So we have a pallet bridge in this instance, where normally Swiss watches would have a pallet cock, and we have a center wheel cock here, which only has one screw. So we take that off and we'll examine our escapement. We'll have a look and we'll examine... silly me, I forgot to take the cannon pinion off. Have a look at our escapement, check our pivots, and we need to check our pallet stones. So I like to just clean them up in a little bit of Rodico. You'll notice I use the blue Rodico, it's by far the best. And we can check our pallet pivots for cuts and dents. And they look good, so they can go in the cleaning basket. Now let's flip our movement over. And get the calendar work off. It's interesting, I totally forgot that the calendar work was on this watch, because usually I would remove the calendar work first. But for some reason today I didn't, so who knows why. Calendar screws, we use the black 100 screwdriver is the best. We've popped out there. Is the best screwdriver to use for that. Again, whenever we're touching our movement or pushing our movement into a movement holder, we do want to use finger cots. Actually, not this watch, but a previous watch I did. There was a giant fingerprint across here from previous use, and it was etched in. It went through the cleaning machine, went through the ultrasonic, nothing. It couldn't come out. So we always want to make sure that we use finger cots when we're dismantling and putting the movement back together. Now, really, we shouldn't be touching a movement when we put it back together, or dismantling for that matter. But hey, these things happen. Now, to get our little plastic. Sometimes they're plastic, sometimes they're metal. To get a little plastic wheel out here, I always like to use just a bit of Rodico, and the teeth don't get marked when we take it out that way. And then I just take it off the Rodico and I put it in a cleaning basket, and I put plastic parts together so that they're not pushing up against anything and getting damaged. So let's get our cannon pinion off. Actually, no, first, let's take our spring out here, and then take our calendar off. Now, we don't want to damage our calendar teeth, so I like to use my boxwood tweezers because they don't damage, and we'll put that over there for safekeeping. These boxwood tweezers are just fantastic. I absolutely love them. They're so good for hands. They're so good for calendar work, everything like that. They're just a fantastic little tweezer. Okay, now we need to take our cannon pinion off. Now, our cannon pinion is friction fit, so we need to make sure that we use the correct device. I like to use the Presto tool. It's a good option for removing cannon pinions. And now our wheel's fallen out. Don't forget our wheel. And we can check our wheel, and that's ready to get cleaned in the basket. Okay, we can get to work with dismantling the rest of our movement. And keeping everything aside. Remove our keyless work. Grey screwdriver for those screws. Now, it's important that we don't get our keyless work screws mixed up with our pallet cock screw. Oh, our spring's about to jump out. Let's get our spring out of there. These components, we check them, but we check them afterwards because there's generally very little wear on components like this, so we can check them afterward. And we take out our setting lever. Almost done. We want to take out our Diafix, as they're called, or Inca Block, as they're known in Swiss watches. Well, Inca Block's a brand name. The point is they have a cap jewel and an end stone. That's the point. The point is what they do, not what they're called. So our movement is pretty much stripped down at this point. Now we want to do possibly the most important thing in watchmaking. Friction is the enemy of a mechanical watch. That's a pretty common fact. George Daniels tried to make a frictionless escapement. Well, he succeeded. Omega didn't succeed in making it frictionless, hence the reason they lubricate it. But friction, if we can reduce friction, if we can remove friction, we can have a better running watch. Breguet said something to the tune of, give me the perfect oil and I'll give you the perfect watch. So important, pegging out jewels. We use a sharpened piece of pegwood to clean out our jewels, to make sure we remove old lubricants in our jewels. We just run them around like so to make sure we get all the old crap out of there. Because I've seen so many watches come out of a cleaning machine with crap on the jewels. Or bushings, not just jewels, bushings. Even watches that have been through ultrasonic. So I don't have an ultrasonic cleaning machine. I have a 4-stage Elmer cleaning machine. I don't have an ultrasonic cleaning machine. An ultrasonic cleaning machine is going to set you back a pretty penny. A Swiss one's like 20 grand. And there's a US made one, Lidditz, which I'm really interested to get, but they're still like 15,000 Canadian dollars. So they're very expensive. So what I do is I actually put all my components in a small cleaning basket, and I put them in the ultrasonic tank in the fluid, and then it just gets them clean. Then I put it through a 4-stage cleaning process. So all my watches really go through a 5-stage cleaning process. I do this because I find that particularly the end stones and cap jewels of Seiko watches and the train wheels, pinions, they're so gummed up and full of crap. If you just put them through a regular 4-stage cleaning machine, they're not going to come out clean. I don't generally clean out my cap jewels with pegwood. I probably should, but I just don't. But again, I put those through the ultrasonic tank. And if they do need to be cleaned after, I will clean them with pegwood after. But sometimes they can be really difficult to separate beforehand. So that's the reason that I do that. Now we want to clean our main plate. We want to clean both sides of our jewels. So we want to clean up the actual surfaces, as well as the side where the oil cup side, I should say. So really make sure we get in there and clean those jewels out. Now we can open up our barrel. A couple more jewels we have to go. Couple more jewels to go. I should practice what I preach and make sure I do all of them, hey? Doesn't look very good for a YouTube channel if I don't do them all. Okay, let's open up our barrel. We do this with our fingers and just pop her open like that. Now these are usually pretty filthy. And this one's no exception. Look at that. Lovely, 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 lovely. we'll get that cleaned up and punched up, and we'll take that mainspring out after. Because I do service reports, I have to do double duty on these watches. I have to actually stop the video and take pictures along the way so that I can prepare these service reports. So it can make it quite difficult sometimes. So I can't do everything on camera always. Okay. Now I'm going to perform the barrel jewel upgrade. There's other videos of this, so we're not going to show this on this video. What we'll do is we'll stop here, and then we'll come back once the watch is cleaned and ready to assemble. In fact, we might actually do that in part 2. So this will be part 1, the dismantling process, and part 2 is going to be the assembly process. So thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Please stay tuned for part 2. It'll be coming probably pretty soon. And please subscribe to the channel so you know when the next videos are coming up. And also check out my latest website, ashtontracy.ca, and follow me on Instagram as well. Thanks, guys, and look forward to seeing you on the next video.